Hello children. In my last part, I read out the poem to you and I also discussed the theme of the poem. In this part, I will explain the poem line by line. So without much ado, let's move ahead. Here we come to that page of poem, and as I explain the poem to you, I want you to note down the difficult words that I'm going to explain along with their meanings. These words and the meanings will be flashed on your screen for your convenience. Let's begin, children. When the jet sprang into the sky, underline the word sprang. The word sprang means flew. It rose high. When the jet sprang into the sky, it was clear why the city had developed the way it had. Now, the poet starts with the scenario that he is in a flight in an airplane and the airplane has taken off into the sky. And as it rose a little higher, he could see the city underneath him. He could see the streets, the buildings that he had already seen while on the streets or while in that city itself. And as he was rising high, it was getting clear to him that why the city had developed the way it has been. He could understand the logic behind the development of that city. Seeing it scaled 6 inches to the mile. Now, this line suggests that as you go higher, the height of the height between the airplane and the ground is also converted into its scale, its proportionate scale. So, scaled 6 inches to the mile is just a proportion that the poet has given to the readers, and that as he moves up, and he cannot exactly tell the height wherein he is, but he can always tell in proportion to what we can find. Generally, such kind of proportions are given in the maps if you have ever seen. There seemed an inevitability. Underline the word inevitability. This means something that is unavoidable, which you cannot avoid. There seemed an inevitability about what on ground had looked haphazard. Underline the word haphazard. Haphazard means unorderly or unplanned, without any particular fashion or order. Unplanned and without style. So here in these 3 lines, the poet says that when he looked at the city, which once seemed like a haphazard thing, like an unplanned or a city without any style, any order, or any particular fashion, that seems to be inevitable, means that seems unavoidable. The logic that the city looks haphazard while he was residing there, now it looks all logical as he moves up in the sky and looks at the city. He feels very good about it. When the jet sprang into the sky. Children, you can notice that the same line is repeated again, which was given in the first line, is also given as the last line of this paragraph. And this is a poetic device wherein if a particular line is repeated at the beginning or the end of every stanza, then this poetic device is called as refrain. We will do the poetic devices later. Let's move to the second paragraph. When the jet reached 10,000 feet, it was clear why the country had cities where the rivers ran and why the valleys were populated. Now, here the poet has risen a little above in height, and he says that when the airplane reached 10,000 feet above the ground, it was clear to him that why countries are divided into cities. Why do countries have got cities? And countries also have rivers. And it was very logically understandable to him that why people populated only near rivers And why the valleys were so populated? That's because when people are staying near river, the land near the river is very fertile, so it eases them uh, to grow crops and pursue agriculture. So it was very clear, the logic of geography was very clear, that why people were staying near rivers, because for them the livelihood was easier. Next, the logic of geography, that land and water attracted man, was clearly delineated. Underline the word delineated. Delineated means shown or displayed. So here the poet says that the logic of geography that he had learned, and what's the logic of geography? That the land and water always attracted man. Man has always been settling at areas where there is good land and there is availability of water. So this logic of geography was clear to him when he reached about 10,000 feet high, and he could see a larger view of the ground. He could see the country or the area being divided into small cities and being populated thickly. When the jet reached 10,000 feet high. Again in this stanza, the first line is repeated. So the poetic device used here is refrain. When the jet rose 6 miles high, it was clear the earth was round and that it had more sea than land. Okay, now in this stanza, the poet says that now the jet has risen higher and it is now 6 miles high. It is above 6 miles above the ground. And when it has risen higher, it had become clear to him that the earth was round in shape. And he also could visualize that it had more sea than land. Children, we are very much aware of this fact that there is 70% of water on earth, right? And if you have seen the image of planet earth, you can very well recognize that the blue portion is more than the green or brown portion. So this is what the poet has realized when he has risen 6 miles in height above the ground. But it was difficult to understand that the men on the earth found causes to hate each other, to build walls across the cities, and to kill. From that height, it was not clear why. Now, the poet's jet was going higher and higher. He could understand why the city, which once looked haphazard, was planned in such a way. He could understand the logic of geography, that why people had populated only near river and where the land was fertile. He could also understand that the earth was round and there was more water than land. But one thing he never understood was, or which was difficult for him to understand, was that why men on earth had always found a reason to hate each other. Why men on earth had built walls across cities. These walls are not the actual physical walls, but these walls refer to the boundaries or the territories of those particular states and countries. And these territories are secured, they are protected with their guards. And what he could not understand was that why men had reasons to kill each other. So from that height, from that you know, even though he went that higher in the sky, and he could understand the other things, but this one particular thing was not clear to him, and he could not validate or he could not reason out why this happened in the lives of people. So here we finish the explanation of the poem. In case of any doubt, I'm always here to clarify your queries. Before I go, let me give you a flash of the word meanings that we did today and talk about the poetic device refrain. These are the word meanings that we saw today. Please learn them at home and use them in your own sentences. Now let's have a look at the poetic device refrain. It is the repetition of a line in a stanza to create a rhyming or musical effect. Have a look at the first stanza. The line is, "When the jet sprang into the sky." Now, this line appears twice in the stanza, thus, it is an example of refrain. Similarly, in the second stanza, the line, "When the jet reached 10,000 feet," also is repeated, thus, this is also an example of refrain. That's all for today. See you in my next video wherein we will discuss the question answers related to this poem. Thank you very much and take good care of yourself.